Coming up on Network Africa, Zimbabwe declares February the 21st Robert Mugabe National Youth Day. Plus, fighting in Somalia forces thousands to flee their homes to Mogadishu. And later, a South African woman has been crowned Miss Universe. It's the first edition of the program this week, and it's a pleasure to have you. I am Bisi Adebayo. Let's see what stories made headlines over the weekend.
Former Zimbabwe Finance Minister Ignatius Chombo has been detained until his bail application on Monday. The state prosecutor said Chombo was charged with attempting to defraud the Zimbabwean Central Bank, among other offences allegedly committed in 2004. Chombo is among those detained by the military when it seized power before Robert Mugabe resigned. He was charged on Saturday with 3 counts of corruption in offences that allegedly occurred more than a decade ago. A former university lecturer and Mugabe's ally was promoted in an October cabinet reshuffle from the Interior Ministry to the finance portfolio. On a television show on Saturday, Dr. John Sentamo was handed a piece of the collar and he caught live from the same program in December 2007 by the show's presenter Andrew Moore, who asked the bishop if he was still going to put on a collar again.
It's lovely. I promised that when Mugabe goes, I'll put my collar on, so I have no choice but to put it back on.
Give you a promise,
absolutely. And Mugabe has gone, but the new president has got to remember something more new than just simply stitching up a thing will work.
Then in Egypt, citizens expressed their anger after a terrorist attack on a mosque that killed over 305 people in Egypt. The attack happened around noon on Friday when Muslims gathered at a mosque for weekly prayers. An explosive device detonated and gunmen fired at worshippers in the mosque and a small village in North Sinai, killing at least 305 people, including children, and injuring more than 100. According to local media reports from intelligence agencies, the Egyptian Air Force carried out airstrikes and raids overnight against militants believed to be responsible for the killings. The raids destroyed 2 jets involved in the attack and killed over 22 suspected terrorists, as well as taking out dozens of bases filled with firearms, ammunition, and explosives used by terrorists to launch attacks. The attack is the first against Muslim worshippers at a mosque in Egypt and the deadliest in the country's modern history.
Now, Zimbabwe is still very much in the news, and this time the country has declared February the 21st as the Robert Mugabe National Youth Day. Well, this makes the former president's birthday a public holiday. Well, that's not all. President Emmerson Mnangagwa is expected to form a cabinet this week.
Normalcy and calm returned to the streets of Zimbabwe after days of political drama that saw the fall of their longtime leader, Robert Mugabe, and the rise of a former vice president, Emmerson Mnangagwa. Although Mugabe is gone, he will continue to have a role to play in Zimbabwean politics. According to the Jesuit priest who helped to negotiate his resignation, Mr. Mugabe will provide advice as an elder statesman, even to the new president. Every 21st of February has also been officially declared as Robert Gabriel Mugabe National Youth Day, thereby making the former president's birthday a public holiday. The country's police and army announced that joint patrols will be conducted, especially in the central business district of the capital, Harare. In a joint statement issued with the army, the police say they are now assuming their role of maintaining law and order and guaranteeing the safety of citizens. Elsewhere in Harare, as part of new President Emmerson Mnangagwa's crackdown on corruption, former Finance Minister Ignatius Chombo appeared in court for a bail hearing after he was detained by the military. He was charged with corruption, including trying to defraud the central bank in 2004. Meanwhile, the Chinese government has dismissed speculation that it was involved in the overthrow of Robert Mugabe. Questions over the possible role Zimbabwe's longtime ally may have played were raised after it emerged that General Constantino Chiwenga had visited Beijing the week before the army stepped in to end Mr. Mugabe's 37-year rule. In the coming days, President Emmerson Mnangagwa is expected to name members of his new cabinet.
In Ivory Coast, EU and African leaders are meeting to discuss security and migration at the EU-Africa Summit in Abidjan. Youth and migration will top the agenda, with both French President Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Angela Merkel keen to limit the flow of migrants to Europe.
EU and African leaders are to meet this week to discuss security and migration at the EU-Africa Summit in Abidjan. Youth and migration will top the agenda, with both French President Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Angela Merkel keen to limit the flow of migrants to Europe by introducing tighter checks and controls on African soil. The meeting will majorly center around a footage showing men being auctioned as farmhands in Libya. To help young people find employment in their own country, Ivory Coast has implemented a national policy with projects of more than $5.5 million being invested in 2016. Financed by this initiative, the training center in the city of Grand Bassam is a training center for young people who are out of the school system. The biggest challenge here remains following up on the young people once they have accomplished the training. For the Minister of Employment and Youth, the real challenges young Ivorians face are in their own country.
It is a real shocking situation for everybody. But once we face this situation, we can only launch a real appeal to our youth, so they understand that in reality, the El Dorado is right here, and that they should not run after an El Dorado, which doesn't exist, when you have all the different elements right here. Africa is not just the continent of migration and crisis. It's a continent of the future.
Macron's proposals to bolster African growth and create jobs echo Germany's call for a Marshall Plan for Africa. He also promises to raise France's aid budget from 0.38% of the national income to 0.55% by 2022. Meanwhile, following that embarrassing report from Libya, some West African countries have recalled their ambassadors to the country. But many West Africans and even the United Nations Human Rights Office accuse Europe of facilitating the abuses by co-opting Libya to reduce the migrant flow without taking much interest in how they achieve this.